Good morning and welcome to today's Society of Light and Lighting webinar discussion. Just before we start, I'll run through a few housekeeping notes. So if you're having any difficulty hearing or seeing us, you might want to log out and then just log back in. Today's webinar will be recorded and a link to the recording will be shared in an email that goes out tomorrow. And during today's discussion, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function and we'll try and get around to those at the end. If we don't make it, we will try and answer them after today's session. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Juliette Rennie. I am the Society of Light and Lighting Coordinator, and I'm joined today by Kaye Preston and Kael Gillam. And I'm going to open it straight up and start the discussion. They're going to introduce themselves and give a bit of context as to their background and sort of raising awareness around mental health and well-being. So over to you guys.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much for having us today. Really excited to talk about Designer's Mind. So a little bit about me. So possibly for many of you, my name is Kaye Preston, and I'm the founder of Designer's Mind. My background is actually interior design, and I've been in the industry for just over 15 years, I'd say. And I guess for me, so I'm a designer and I'm a well-accredited professional, and I'm also a health coach. So I'm really, really interested in how design can affect our overall well-being, but then how the two kind of really go hand in hand. And that's kind of a little bit about my background. I have a coaching practice where I work through this with mindset and health and supportive environments through the home, and then also a well-being consultant with a commercial real estate practice who I'm part of their consultancy team, building their wellness and design department. And we help companies through with well-being strategies and the design of their offices and that kind of thing, and making it align to their health, basically. That's a little bit about me.
Oh. Hi everyone, I'm Kael. I'm a senior lighting designer at Nulty, and Kaye has swept me along in this beautiful journey for Designer's Mind. I've always been really interested in mental health kind of from both ends of the spectrum. Is that, you know, I've been involved in my own personal struggles with my mental health, and have actually at some point did really want to be a psychologist. So I've kind of taken that study and that interest and that firsthand experience kind of from both ends, and realized that it's a really integral thing of what we all do every day. And so my involvement in this has kind of come from someone on the front lines who probably has a very relatable story about, you know, I got to this point and then, that we'll get into later. So yeah, that's how I'm involved. Kaye told me about this, what was it, last year, year before last? I can't even remember. And yeah, I've just been here supporting her and doing everything that we possibly can to get more people involved. That's me.
That's brilliant. And thank you both so much for joining us today as well to have this discussion. We really appreciate it. So I guess maybe a good place to start would be kind of looking at the background and what led to the founding of Designer's Mind and the aim sort of behind it.
Absolutely. So this kind of came about late last year, actually. So we are still very much in our infancy. But it was a very organic process, how it kind of came about, with kind of multiple aha moments kind of strung together for me. I was actually invited to attend a Mad World Summit last October. And for me, this was really interesting because I do find, I hold my hand up with this, that I tended to go to events that were much more around design or architecture, that kind of thing, stay within the sector. So this event was surrounded by business people outside of the design world, and it was amazing to just listen to all the different companies and what they were doing around well-being. It was fantastic. And I was noticing that a lot of them had well-being ambassadors internally and all these well-being strategies. So it's like, okay, this is interesting. And then I got asked to co-chair a roundtable to talk about so here I was kind of diving in. I'm like, okay. Again, it was just kind of slowly building the aha moments. I was sitting around a table with a lot of people from HR and marketing and all these different business backgrounds, trying to kind of raise awareness that we can use design as a tool for everyone's well-being. I thought, this is great. And then I attended a seminar about how there's a lot of general kind of like Minds at Work, I think is one, a lot of nonprofits and charities that are working to raise awareness about mental health and well-being in the workplace. I thought, okay, this is fantastic. I knew about the architects having a forum. So if anyone wants to go check that out, they have a forum for architects. It's amazing. And then I heard a journalist speak. And they were raising awareness about a specific forum for journalists. And I thought, okay, this is it. So it's like stringing together, as I said, of all these aha moments. And I was like, well, wait, okay, so everyone here is raising awareness about mental health and well-being. I just taught about using design as a tool for other people's well-being, but as a designer, I wasn't feeling very well myself. And my whole journey through the industry is one of burnout and exhaustion, and it's just, and I know I'm not unique in that. So I just thought, okay, and that was the light bulb moment. I'm like, how are we creating spaces for others to be well, but we're not feeling well ourselves or taking care of ourselves? And I just thought, okay, this is it. Designer's Mind was born, and it was actually born on a weekend.
When you had time.
Yeah, so Nulty was really lovely, and they wanted me to come in and talk about and then I was speaking to a couple of them and thought, well, actually, perhaps we could, if you wouldn't mind, if we could tack on a bit about Designer's Mind at the end of the talk. And they were all for it. They were so supportive, which was fantastic. And then a friend of mine, a good friend, said, okay, well, you have an audience. Perhaps you should show them something about Designer's Mind, a website. Or I'm like, oh, well, my talk's only in a few days. I'm like, great, I guess that's what I'm doing this weekend. So building a website. I enlisted a friend in Amsterdam, a really good friend of mine. He's also a designer. He helped me with the copy. So it was really team effort to kind of get this thing off the ground, so I could show the Nulty team something. And that's kind of how it was born. As I said, it was all very, very organic, and the support it's gotten since then is just fantastic. And I'm just, so grateful for everyone that's been interested. And I'll leave it with Kael, actually, because the Nulty team have been so supportive of this, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real blessing to have you come in, because I think that we had just met a couple of weeks before you came into Nulty.
We had, yeah.
And I actually wasn't there for this talk, which is the funny thing. And so we got to talking about, oh, okay, what do you do? Oh, we do this and that. And then, I had this idea to do something about well-being. And we, I think, talked straight for an hour without eating, which we were meant to be doing. And it was really apparent to me that, so many people have had these not very unique experiences that we can all rally behind, but we don't necessarily know how to speak about in the workplace or outside of the workplace, for that matter. And our whole crew, so there's a couple of us at Nulty who desperately want to be part of this, where, we had Sophie O'Rourke, who's been talking to us about social media, because in one of her previous positions, she helped a lot with that. So we had a big, long chat with Kaye and Rhiannon and the other people that are involved in Designer's Mind that Kaye will list out later. And Anna Sangren, who's at our office, and she's been trying to convince us to do more meditation and breathing exercises. And bless her, she is currently our Wellbeing ambassador. So yeah, I mean, it didn't take much, I think, to convince all of us that it was a really worthwhile thing to do, and that we had enough people in our practice trying to do this on very small, sort of one-off incidences, that we went, okay, let's get organized, let's get this going.
Yeah, I think that's it. Having something where you can share experiences, because sometimes it's just hearing that someone else is actually going through the exact same thing. There's a lot of kind of comfort and reassurance in that, and realizing I'm not just struggling and on my own here. I think having a sort of forum then when you can discuss it, and then across different design disciplines as well, where people would be working closely, but not necessarily having some sort of a platform to talk about things that aren't related to a specific project. It's really incredible.
Absolutely. So, and I think, oh, sorry.
No, you go for it.
Just that you touched on two really beautiful points there is part of our whole ethos is sharing. That's a big part of what I wanted Designer's Mind to be about. Not just about the raising awareness and the challenges, and for me with my health coaching background to to be able to teach healthier habits and what that actually means for us. But sharing our experiences, that's actually at the core, and what we're really interested in. And as you've just said, it's that idea that as soon as you hear that you're not alone, it kind of, there's something in that just like, oh my goodness, weight off shoulders. I thought I was the only one. So that's a big part of what we want to do and what we want to achieve, is just sharing our experiences so that others don't feel as alone. But then also your second point of just really opening this up. So although my background is an interior designer, I didn't want it to be interior designer's mind. I just thought designers and the creative industries as a whole, yes, we have different roles, but we experience some of so much similar pressures and deadlines in the way that we work, that it was really important for me to be able to open this up to other design disciplines as well.
Yeah. I think, as well as sort of the things, sort of sharing experiences of where people might be struggling or finding certain things challenging, there are elements that people might find it harder or are more reluctant to talk about, but it's just as worthwhile. So that feeling of kind of that, I guess it links into presenteeism and that feeling of like needing to be seen and not being the first one to leave the office, when actually it's important, that's your time, and it's but people can't always, sometimes because they're just too busy, but sometimes I guess people feel like they can't, and that's probably quite an important thing to look at in terms of well-being.
Yeah, because there's oh, sorry, go on.
Oh no, please, Kael.
Well, I think that, so Kaye and I are both basically like very, very into this Deloitte report that gets submitted every 2 years, kind of as a general guidance for how the country is doing in terms of well-being. And there are some devastating statistics in there. We do not have a PowerPoint presentation. Do not worry, we are not going to get into it. But the baseline is that really there is a real problem with presenteeism. So that's you showing up to work when you're not feeling your best, even though you know you should be home, but you feel pressured to not take sick days, or you feel pressured to do the work that you've been given despite the fact that you are not in the best place you can be. So that costs the government, I don't remember what the figure is, a ridiculous amount of money each year for people being at work when they shouldn't be, or being out of work for reasons that they can't then explain to their employers. So a lot of people will say, oh, I'm taking a sick day, when actually it's, my friend is in a really bad place and I need to help them right now. There's no kind of place for that in the way that our workplaces are. Is that there's no, I need to help a friend because she's, grieving. You can't take a sick day for that, can you, under normal circumstances? So, there's a lot in that, in the Deloitte report, like 1 in 10 people who disclosed mental health problems to their employers got dismissed or disciplined, or they were demoted because of that. So just telling people has like really, it's still a stigma. It's really horrendous. So trying to share things is still so much of a problem within that. And then Kaye, you know the rest of the Deloitte report by heart. So if you wanted to jump into any of that.
Oh, not quite, but thank you, lovely. No, I think, and we were speaking the other day about this, that just one of the shocking numbers and now this is UK industry, the complete industry. This is not just the design industry, but I believe it says something around 45 billion annually, and that's up from 2017 when the last report was issued. And this is presenteeism, absenteeism, and retention. So it does cost a lot, and it's this idea, I suppose, that and perhaps that we were talking about before, of some of the challenges we face around this. Why does this happen, and how we could kind of work to make that better. So within the design industry, this is not happening, right? And
yeah, one thing we talked about before as well was that sort of one thing leading to another of sort of when there are improvements and people do feel more able to sort of express themselves and how they're feeling, and they feel that they have room to be honest about sort of how they're feeling, and that will be accepted and sort of understood within their working life, that then leads to kind of increased productivity. So it's because people feel happier and more comfortable. So there's that kind of knock-on effect. So it's in the interest of businesses to you know, kind of look after people, that it's a reciprocal relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as soon as somebody feels heard, that, you know, that goes leaps and bounds, heard by their leadership, by their direct line manager, by the company, just feels heard, that their needs are heard. And as people, that's so important. We need to feel like our needs are being met. And it's when we feel like our needs aren't being met, that's when, you know, you can get into a real domino effect there of, you know, it's a bit of a slippery slope and it can go multiple ways, but, you know, that can really cause problems for people.
Yeah, I think that appears to be, I don't know whether it's just something because I'm sort of interested in it, but there appears to be more awareness around mental health and well-being at the moment. Well, there is definitely with like the Well Standard and other initiatives that have been introduced. But with that comes, and I know this is something you sort of like to talk about, Kaye, but it gets overwhelming. I guess there's a lot of things. It's like, make sure you're, you know, staying hydrated, that you're eating well, that you're getting enough sleep, that you and working and living.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, we've touched on this, and I think when you're teaching people about healthy habits, and I can feel quite often their energy change and that overwhelm and stress that comes with, oh my goodness, I have to do what in my day? Like, I need to include all of the things. I need to sleep for 8 hours. I need to have family time and connect with loved ones. I need to cook and eat well and stay hydrated and move and meditate. I mean, I'm stressing out just giving the list, and that's not even the full one. I need to make sure my finances are healthy. I need to, you know, make sure I have purpose and meaning. It's just like, oh my goodness, how am I going to achieve this, right? And I think, as we were talking about, this is where it's like a mindset shift, which is might be controversial for some, but I'm just going to go there. That like a culture shift, and this idea that if we put health, our actual well-being, at the core of everything we do, how much better we show up in all the other areas of our life, right? So if you don't, I mean, people who have had health scares will be, you know, they know this only all too well. And that's physical health scares or mental health scares. That if you don't have your health, be physical or mental, you don't have anything like that. It starts with that place, right? So it's this idea, okay, we start with our health. If I'm feeling energized and full of vitality because I've slept, right? That's a great starting place. Prioritize your sleep. If I have meditated even for just 5 minutes, that's also stress management, you know, sleep and, you know, and then all of a sudden I'm feeling a lot calmer. I'm clear of mind. I'm ready to take on my day. If I'm making healthier food choices, we have to eat anyways. That's not extra time, that has to be done. So that is a choice of what I'm choosing, right? To nourish my body with. And again, if I choose healthier choice, there's the 80-20 rule with well-being that I quite enjoy. You know, it's not an all or nothing thing. You can't give up, you know, it's not all about being squeaky clean, but it's this idea that the more healthier choices I'm making through the day, my energy levels are higher. As I said, I'm full of vitality. If I take breaks through the day to move, that could just be a walk at lunch. That could be I get up from my desk every hour, do some stretches. Maybe I have a practice in the morning where I stretch, or one before I go to sleep at night. All these kind of things, and it's just thinking about how you can incorporate them into your day, and then realizing with that energy and that health, what else you can achieve. All of a sudden, you're showing up at work better. You are coming from a place that you're filled up and you're ready to go, right? You're not coming a place. How many of us have, goes back to that presentee who have shown up sleep deprived? Is your day as productive, right? No. Do you focus as well? No. Right? Are you as creative? We are a creative bunch. Do you think your creativity is going to suffer if you are constantly sleep deprived or running on sugar highs and crashing all throughout the day, right? Probably not. So it's really this idea that if you fill yourself up first, you take care of your health and well-being, what other areas benefit? My work improves, my relationships improve. We also know that, I mean, it's all connected. Our whole lives are connected, every piece. So to the overwhelm piece, it's like, okay, I tell people, if you move the needle in one area, quite often you'll see other areas benefit. So if
Yeah.
I'm eating better and showing up, my work improves. If I'm not as stressed, my relationships, my communication in my relationships might improve. You know, it's this idea that actually you move the needle a little bit in one and they all benefit. So to that overwhelm, like it's just changing how we think about it and not seeing it as a big list of things to do, because that is a recipe for overwhelm. It's actually reframing our minds and thinking about how we can work it in and how much it would benefit us, you know, in all areas of our lives.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went off on a
Absolutely.
little bit of a tangent. You can
Oh,
tell that's my passion point.
I think that's the important sort of change that's needed, is definitely that, rather than thinking of it as tasks that you're adding to an already too long kind of list. It's
Yeah.
things that will actually make the other bits and pieces that you need to get done on that list flow much better, and you'll feel more confident about approaching them and kind of more equipped, I guess, to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're focused a bit more on mental health and well-being with Designer's Mind, but I think for me, it's your health, just like all the areas of your life, are so connected. And if your physical health and your mental health, they are not separate. They go hand in hand. And yes, there's life events that will affect your mental health, absolutely. But your general day-to-day mental health, if your physical health is in a better spot with the sleep and the stress management and, you know, eating well, your mental health tends to be in a stronger spot as well. So the two are connected.
Yeah. And I know, Kael, you've been looking at sort of putting together kind of policy or a structure that different workplaces could use to kind of introduce a more sort of concerted effort towards maintaining well-being and looking after people, I guess.
Yeah, so the hope is that, you know, if you can make your own personal foundation that's quite strong and that you know your limitations and your boundaries and what you can do for yourself on a day-to-day basis, then I think, you know, your employers need to do the same. Is that, you know, that like organizational wide and like cultural awareness changes are actually the most effective way of boosting mental health well-being in your employees. So it's better than any sort of reactive mental health support options like counseling. So if you have a culture shift in which your employees feel like they can be their best in whatever way that means to them, then they're more likely to have a productive relationship with their clients, which can be very challenging, with their managers, with their leadership, with their colleagues. So it all, again, like Kaye said, it all fits together. So if everyone is trying from different angles to make the experience of a person day-to-day better, then we're all going to feel, you know, a lot happier. So as far as the policy building goes, this one is quite tricky because, like Kaye said, with a very long list of things that you need to do to feel better yourself, I think employers look at it as a very long list of very expensive things that they need to do to make people happy, when that's frankly just not it. I think what it is kind of questioning the status quo of what the like government baseline ideas are, because they, to be fair, I come from America where we have some really poor baseline government guidelines for what things like overtime and maternity leave are. So again, grain of salt, because I think that the baselines here are better than they could be. But things like, you know, I was talking about bereavement. We're currently in a state of the world where everyone is going through a level of grief and bereavement that is very not usual and is incredibly extended. I mean, I, for many, many weeks at the beginning of this, went, I don't know if I'm going to go home. I don't know when the next time is. I'm from America, if anyone didn't catch it in the accent. But like, I don't know when that's going to happen. And there is so much tied up in, if I can't go home, what if, right? So, you know, there's that existential anxiety. So if we get onto things like, you know, if someone does pass away, you know, there's a 2-week bereavement that's mandated by the government, right? So that you've got to get paid for 2 weeks. Is that enough? Is that genuinely enough? Is your employer going to go, all right, come on, you're done being sad, get back to work? That's not how it works. there needs to be some sympathy in policies like this. So maternity and paternity leave, for example, I think the companies need to have a more understanding policy than, all right, lads, get back in, spend 2 weeks. Ready? Yeah, good. Your wife can take care of herself for the next, however many months that we've allowed her to take off. I think that all of these things need to have a much more personal touch. And, every family treats responsibilities differently. Is that you should be able to look at at two parents, sorry, just to clarify, it doesn't have to be like a man and a woman, it can be whomever and however you put your family together. Just wanted to make that clear. But, you might share those responsibilities very differently, or you've had the conversation where, one partner is very comfortable taking care of that child and they would want the other one to go back to work. So I think that these things need to be made more flexible and attuned to how the rest of our lives is.
Yeah.
So the other things in policies, obviously we have employee assistance programs, which there are so many of these that are coming out now where it's, there's a fitness tracker and there's access to 24/7 counseling, and that's lovely, but that is more on the reactive side. And that requires a lot of investment, which is more of like putting it on the list of things I need to do to make myself better. I won't get into the stigma around counseling because that is a whole nother hour of me going off about it. But I mean, that's an important thing, and it could be part of your benefits package, but that goes back to the, ooh, that's an expensive line item, let's just skip over that.
Yeah.
I think that probably the most controversial thing that I want to talk about is overtime. So as Kaye has mentioned, we have all done overtime. We have all stayed late in the studio. We have occasionally come in on weekends and then not said anything about it because we didn't want to seem like we were working too hard to get something done when we could have done it in normal hours. Right. So my take on this is that there are two extremes. You could make everyone leave at 5:30, which could be an absolute detriment to your work, or you could start paying people for overtime, which would be an absolute detriment to the company. So without doing either of these things, how do you encourage people to be sensible about how much time they should be spending in the office? How do you encourage people to leave on time? And can you encourage people to say, to put their hand up in front of their manager and go, look, I have this really difficult thing, and given my workload this week, I don't know if I can get X done for Y. And then you have that conversation. It's instilling people with that confidence that you can do that. And then if that deadline is absolutely destroying you, to be able to put your hand up and say, can I take a mental health day after? Because that sort of like feeling after, oh man, like my mother has always taught me that this is a very important thing is, if you have reached your mental limits, you're going to be useless the next day, aren't you? And yeah, we've talked about this at length. It's like, we have that, even if you're not working late and if you get the issue out at 5:30, which congratulations when you do that, it's a good feeling, isn't it? But when you get there, you are so mentally drained and exhausted that probably all you want to do is like eat something that's going to make you happy and then sleep at least 8 hours, right? Like you just want to feel like you can go back to not being on high alert and having your like fight or flight just like constant, just keeping you awake, keeping you to get to 5:30. Yeah, exactly. So with the overtime thing, like I think this is something that companies really need to think about, is that, you need to instill a culture where you don't have to put in a policy that says your email shuts off after 5:30, or that, if you do need to come in on the weekend, you need to have a really, really good reason for it. And if you do, you can have that time back in lieu, right? But for something that is so specific to what we do and how our clients behave sometimes, which, it's not every client, obviously, but, we do get the request of, oh, can your team come in on Saturday to have this done before we come back to the office on Sunday? I mean, the answer is not unless you're giving us the time back. Because there's that lack of respect there, isn't it? Is that they don't respect the fact that that's our time to have, that we need to recuperate so that we can do better as we go through the weeks and the days. So it's a lot about boundary setting and making sure that your employer has that in their head and hopefully in writing, that you can encourage your employees to set their own boundaries and with the consent of their management team. Because you all have to trust each other in order to do good work, don't you? If which I did this, hands up, I came in on the weekends for months and months at a time because I wanted to feel like I was on top of things. I was going through my own like traumatic circumstances at the time where I thought working was a great way to make it all go away. Wasn't. But I was doing that, and I didn't say anything until I was at my breaking point, and I just like, I cannot possibly come in another weekend. Everyone looked at me like, why are you doing that? No one told you to do that. You don't actually need to be here on the weekend. You can do your work in a week. I went, well, yeah, but that's the killer. Yeah, but if you can't even explain to your employer, who would have trusted you to tell them that you were going above and beyond, but weren't really doing any better? So it's like, it becomes this really awful cycle, is that the more that you can speak with each other and the more that you have kind of a policy in place, and you know that you can have those conversations, that is the best way to get everyone to the happiest place that they can be.
That's it. I think there's a lot in that to sort of pick apart as well. I think partly one of the things that we discussed a little bit briefly in the sort of planning sessions for this was the competitive nature of sort of various disciplines within design, but also I think creative industries generally, and the feeling that, I think especially when you're starting out and say it's your first or second job, the feeling that without showing that willingness to just be there all the time and devote sort of every bit of your time to it, there is someone sort of waiting at the door to take your position, and trying to sort of both encourage people to value their time and their skill, but also organizations not to take advantage of something which you could see would be an easy thing. It's like, well, we do need to get that done, and it would be great if someone was here to just finish that off tonight, to not sort of prey on that kind of that vulnerable stage in someone's development, I guess. Okay, we also talked a little bit about sort of that middle management kind of period where you might be responsible for training people and also then getting your own work done. Yeah.
Absolutely. So to that, and then also a little bit following from what Kael's been saying about boundary setting, and the ability and the feeling that it's okay to do that. It's this idea of leadership and the individual and what they need to be responsible for in this whole equation, basically, and then the pressure if you're in the middle of what that actually feels like. So I think to start, individually, I think we need to be able to take responsibility for our own health and what that actually looks like and what that means. So you need to be willing to make those changes that I was mentioning earlier with the healthy food and the sleep. Your employer can't do those things for you, right? So you need to be able to take responsibility for your own health, but you also, I think where the employer and leadership comes in is creating a culture where it's okay to take time to do that. So it's okay to take time to leave at a certain hour so that I can eat well and sleep. I can't even say how many times I've had to choose one or the other, and that's not okay. We're people, we need to eat and sleep. We have to do both those things, right? So there's so many times I've had to choose, oh no, I would rather have 8 hours than eat, so I'm gonna do that instead. That's not okay behavior. So I think from leadership, it's setting a culture where actually they recognize that those things it's all important, and making people feel that they can take the time and leave so that they can make those choices, right? It's setting those examples from the top down, basically, and what that could look like. So that when you are middle management, and there's a lot who's getting the pressure from leadership to meet those deadlines, but also how do you mentor and train the more junior staff? And it's that you need to feel empowered in the middle, that you can do both those things, so that your leadership model, it supports what we've been talking about, supports that health should actually be first at our core, not an afterthought after work is done, and actually kind of create that culture where, well, overtime should not be the norm. Now, I get that we are in a deadline driven, fast-paced industry. I completely understand that, and people join for a reason. They must enjoy that to some degree. I know not everybody can work that way. They much prefer a 9-to-5 structure, and then they go home and fine. But I think with leadership, it's putting that health at the core. It's setting those examples and realizing that, okay, if my team sleeps and eats connects with their family, has time to do other things, they're more productive. And actually, they can get a lot more done in 8 hours. I don't necessarily need them for 12 anymore because they are so much more focused and creative in the 8 hours. And it's making that mindset shift and that culture shift that I was referring to earlier, right? And if I have less absent days because of stress and burnout, even if I'm unaware, it's just been called the flu, but actually it's stress and burnout. And if I have less presenteeism happening in my team and everyone's actually really focused. So this is from leadership, right? This is setting that tone. And then when the junior members see this, they go, to Kael's point, okay, it's actually okay for me to set these boundaries, you know, because I'm in a place and it's like, okay, actually, I need to go home because I need to sleep and eat. And actually this evening, I need to switch off, which is something else that we talked about and we can circle back around to. Does that kind of all make sense? It's all connected, but it needs top leadership. It needs junior members to feel empowered that they can actually set those boundaries. And then it's everyone in the middle not feeling that they're being pulled in two different directions, because actually they have the support from the top and they can build that into their training and mentorship from day one. So we're actually creating a whole new culture of designers, which would be really exciting. People who go, hey, this is actually okay, this is amazing. I can take care of my health. I have time to do that. I show up better at work. I perform better at work. This is, you know, the two go hand in hand. And, you know, we can mentor an entire generation of brand new designers that actually just work in that way. How fantastic would that be? You know, and then when they get to leadership, amazing, right? Like just
Yes.
that vision. I'm getting really excited about that. I mean, yeah, let's have that.
Yeah, I do. I think, especially as you sort of mentioned there, the ability to maintain creativity and come up with kind of new ideas or solutions to problems that is so reliant on you being in the right mindset to be able to do that without feeling sort of overcrowded or kind of stretched too far. I know sort of in your experience, Kael, working as a lighting designer, I know that's something just from working with the society, a lot of our members that we know and talk to have expressed difficulty over the years with kind of maintaining that. How have you, what's your experience been?
Yeah, I think that, you know, sort of as specialist consultants, we get stuck in a really difficult position sometimes, because I think we get employed by a lot of different parts of a design team occasionally. So we'll get appointed by electrical engineers, we'll get appointed by interior designers, sometimes directed by the client, sometimes so where you sit in that hierarchy is very different, and it changes basically from project to project. And I think the most important thing that has made the project work less stressful is understanding who's telling you the message. So if you get that request at 4:30 to say, oh, can we have this done in an hour? But you wanted it on Friday. No, we need it in an hour now. Okay. And then you have to step back. You know, you need to take that moment of, this isn't coming from them. Who is it coming from? Why is it happening? And then why is it coming back to us, right? Like, so organizationally, we kind of always have to have that cap on at every level of design in our company, because we're all very aware kind of the whole political situation of a project, which can be really, really helpful in understanding how people speak with us and how we interact, but can also be kind of damaging if you've got one person in that link that really just doesn't mesh. But it's an important learning experience for all of us, because then we understand, well, you know, Joe can write really harsh emails, but it's because, you know, Stephen is telling him to do that so that he can tell us to do this, and they get, you know, blah, 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 right? And so that pressure, you know, coming from above and then to the side, and then occasionally from below, if you've got yet more specialist consultants that do yet more specialist things, you know, than we do. It's just remembering that and knowing that at the end of the day, you know, that very strong ask and the occasional snooty emails aren't because of you. It's not because of what you've done. Is that someone has asked someone has asked someone has asked someone, And we've now played a game of telephone trying to make someone happy that doesn't respect what that chain looks like. And again, it's that, you know, whoever's asking for something that's like relatively ridiculous, usually doesn't understand the implication of how to make that thing happen. So, you know, yes, taking 3 days out of a deliverable is really challenging because you're probably working straight up to when that's due. You've planned your week based on the thing that needs to be done on Friday. And if you get told an hour before someone wants it done, that obviously can't happen, right? So I think that we all fall into this, hopefully less often than, you know, it happens to some people. Like, I know that this is like, people have clients where this is just like a regular weekly thing where it's like, I need this now. Okay, so you have to plan to not be able to plan. But, you know, and that's a valuable skill in and of itself, right? But I think that that's one of the unique pressures that we kind of feel, is that we are sort of in this messy middle, as Scott Belsky calls it, is that you're in an awkward place where you have a lot of different pressures from a lot of different people, and you basically just need to keep a level head and then be able to respond to that email saying, I'm really sorry, but I can't get this done any sooner than we said we would. Or, you know, thank you for the feedback about the value engineering. I appreciate what you've gone through. Here's what we agree and we don't agree with. That's also something that we all deal with. Right, and so it's about being able to take people's feedback and their requests and to be as, you know, to be polite and respectful, but also to be firm in saying where your boundaries are as a designer, as a person of management, as an owner, just saying, this is what we will and will not do. And you need to be on board with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a hugely important thing. And that, I think, in the face of something like value engineering, if there's lots of different sort of companies or people involved with their own specialisms, to not sort of react defensively, I guess, because that's not gonna be a good working relationship if everyone's like, oh, yeah, I think that's difficult. And also, I guess that maintaining kind of your level-headedness and the planning not to plan, that in itself is a real skill and can be something which is quite exhausting. I think after a while that can lead to its own burnout. So if you then had the support network within your organization around you, that would, yeah, I guess help ease that potential sort of burnout.
It helps that, you know, there are some, I'm not the most level-headed person in our company, I'm not gonna lie, but we have enough people who are very level-headed that, you know, we can go to. Because so when I freak out about an email that I don't know how to respond to, I always go to my manager, Phil, and I'm like, Phil, what do I do? Because you are the calmest person I know. And then we'll sit there and figure out what to do together, because, you know, my response is probably way beyond and his response is probably way too measured. But we know to talk to each other to find what to do effectively.
Yeah.
So it's it's knowing who to speak to about things like this, and, you know, it's knowing that other people will have, you know, different responses to the things that you see, and knowing that that's valid and important.
Yes.
That can be really hard to teach.
I suppose that also raises some challenges for people that are working on their own or who are self-employed and don't necessarily have a kind of immediate group of people that they know are in the same sort of situation. So I guess that's where Designer's Mind would, well, I mean, it's already a very valuable tool, but that could potentially offer some much needed sort of just shared experience and a platform for conversation.
Yeah, the community behind it. I mean, I think, Kaye, that was your whole idea behind the stories, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it being very community led. And I think sometimes for those of us that work in the more commercial side of design, we forget that there's an entire other side of the industry of residential designers and much smaller companies that are kind of 1- and 2-man type or woman type scenarios, and the challenges that raises as well. You know, it is something that, so across the board, whether you're on your own or you're part of a really much larger company and organization, there will be those different challenges. And I suppose it's about knowing who to reach out to, whether it's us or you create a really strong network around you of people that you can go to. But then communication really, I think, is also at the heart of what, you know, a few of the points that have just been raised. And it's how do we talk to each other? within our own team? How do we talk to other consultants? I mean, we don't work in isolation as designers. We're usually part of a larger team. How do we talk to each other? And how do we talk to the client and manage those expectations is, I think, a lot of what we're talking about here, because we've been so used to, if a client asks something, we automatically say yes, even if that means to the detriment of the well-being of our team, right? So it's, how do we manage all of that? How do we make a place where our team feels like it's okay to talk about these things and put up their hand, like we spoke about earlier? And then it's also being comfortable enough to have those conversations with the client and say, actually, we can't get this to you here. We can do it this way, though, obviously always providing a solution. But just kind of, it's that communication and how we speak to each other, how we speak to the client, how we manage everybody's expectations, and then creating a strong network around you for those who work on their own or just have, a couple people in the firm.
I think that's something as the society that we try to encourage generally, but I think it's something that our current president and our president-elect are very focused on, is trying to highlight the fact that we want to provide a sort of community where people can talk to each other in a similar way and share experiences, and whether that's from the design side, or if you're working for a manufacturer or in research, or you're a student coming into things. I think just having something that you can, even if it's just starting off by sending an email to say, is this normal? Should this be happening? We'll either get back to you or other members, just creating a space where people can talk to each other. Also, just picking up on that, I think we, in our discussion on Monday, we had one quote that I sort of jotted down was, do you value your own environment as much as you value the environment that you're trying to create for others? I thought that was a really good sort of point in terms of especially as we're, for the most part, working from home at the moment, for those working. Yeah, it's quite a very good point as well, the sort of, not only your headspace, but the space around you that you're working on can have quite an impact.
Oh my goodness, 100%. I came across this, well, to be honest, when I was actually studying interior design, I remember, and I still haven't done it, but I wanted to write my thesis on, I called it psychology of space at the time because I didn't have any other way of describing it. Now this is going back a few years. I don't think I need to say how many. So we didn't talk about it as much. And everyone kind of looked at me and went, oh, this is interesting. What does that mean? And I said, well, I'm convinced that our space affects us. I'm convinced by it. I don't know how, but I'm convinced the spaces we're in affects our overall well-being. And as I said, I never wrote that thesis, but studying for well, and then actually I integrate that into my coaching practice as well. That so I work with clients through their mindset, healthy habits, and creating a supportive environment around them, because I just think our spaces do affect us, and so much from their organization, from a less glamorous, more functional point of view, but also just having stuff around us that make us feel good. And I think that's been really highlighted now that everyone is at home. They're really looking at their spaces more because they're forced to, how they work and whatnot. So I think just two really quick things for me is working at home, switching off is so important. And I know we talked on Monday about tech and the importance of being able to switch off, and we don't tend to do that. But to have a space in your home right now where you can shut everything away, especially for those of us in, say, London, and other large cities that, are sharing flats or living with partners and they don't have dedicated office space, create a space where you can just put all that away, so that in the evenings you can, and on weekends, mentally shut down, you don't see it. And then another one for me is just to add some greenery, because it just is so good. Put it in the office, put it around you. If you need some numbers, apparently it makes us 15% more productive. So everybody get a desk plant. Studies show this, but I think for me, they just really are calming and they make me happy. So, you know, those are kind of two things for me. Look at your organization and look at your plants, and really, but really be mindful of your space, because it can affect you. And just kind of ask yourself the question, how do I want to feel in here? And if it's in the evenings and I want to feel relaxed and, you know, calm, then create it to the best of your ability, of course, right now, a space that can do that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's it. Even if it's just sort of packing stuff up, putting it in a corner and putting, you know, just it's away.
Just put
Yeah.
it away. Just put it away somewhere where you can put it away, and just so that you don't have to, so that you can make that really clear distinction between, okay, that's my work finished for the day, and now I'm going to transition into my evening. Or when you wake up in the morning, this is my morning time, my morning routine, whatever that looks like for you, and you're not faced with, as soon as you come out of the bedroom, with the amount of tech sitting there, to start your day, you know, so that you can start from a place that it's just about you and filling yourself up, and then you know, you set everything up and get ready for the day.
So I think, as predicted, time has gone pretty quickly. So we've got some questions through. So I'll start off with these. So first one we've got is, do you feel language is a problem? The crossovers between technical and health/well-being disciplines. Words and concepts have different feels and meanings.
Yes, absolutely. I actually, I Googled this and I looked into this to kind of see. So you've got health, you've got wellness, you've got well-being, mental well-being, and it's like, okay, how do we talk about this, and what do these all mean? It can be quite a bit of a minefield, actually. And even when I was looking at different definitions, to be honest, I still wasn't that clear. But I think the way that I kind of think about it is our health and well-being. That's like our overall health, and so that can include things like our physical health, our mental health, but even our emotional health. You know, it's us as a whole. And then wellness is, I like the concept of it being the overall picture of our lives. So our overall wellness, basically, is all those different parts coming together. And then in terms of mental health or mental well-being, again, I found them to be quite interchangeable when I've been Googling and doing the research, but I'm not a trained mental health professional, so I'm sure they would have perhaps a better explanation of that. But those are my findings so far.
Yeah, there does seem to be, sort of just in general kind of media at the moment as well, there is more, you see a lot more about kind of well-being or mindfulness as well. I think that's something that tends to
That's
be,
another good word.
which is, I've seen some really good sort of practical kind of things that you can do for sort of mindfulness and being more present and that type of thing. But I've also seen a lot of quite confusing sort of inspirational quotes in a nice box that, I don't know, generally I think my mum would put on Facebook, just like, you know, embrace every day, and which sometimes have the effect, I think they can sometimes feel like they're contributing to that feeling overwhelmed. You know, seeing a lot of messages like, am I doing this? Do I have purpose?
Yeah. Oh man, I've listened to so many podcasts about like, am I meditating properly? It's like, oh, that's the whole problem, isn't it? It's like, I also had this too. I was like, I can't meditate for more than 5 minutes. Like, it's very, very hard for me. And you know, I think it's difficult because you're taking like this concept that very much has a root in like Eastern philosophy that we are trying to now distill into like a very modern Western ideology. So like, you know, the idea that we have of someone meditating is probably very different from like me on the floor on my bed pillow trying to like sit still for 5 minutes. And then you get into that like comparison ideology, like, am I doing this properly? Is this actually benefiting me? Should I be doing this for an hour facing a wall? Like, is there a way to do this? And yeah, the mindfulness thing, and like, I'm gonna say it wrong, but like Higa, like that Scandinavian idea of like warmth and comfort, that word also means a million things apparently. when actually there is like a strict definition to it that just doesn't translate very well into English. And so I think like mindfulness has probably just become one of those things, is that we've just attributed a whole lot of different meaning to it, and it's a great buzzword. So yeah, it gets messy, doesn't it? Anything that ends up being in the media that could mean a lot of things just goes, yes, and remember to breathe today and drink your 8 glasses of water. And then here's an inspirational quote that we've never heard of before. It is probably misattributed. There we are.
Yeah. So we have another question as well. So it's, I think employees will feel empowered to speak up for their own well-being if they know their employers will hear them without prejudice. How do you change attitudes from the top down? So it's a big one.
Training. I've been trying desperately to convince everyone that I know to get support to do the mental health first aid training. You need to teach people how to receive what you're saying without making judgments on it. And that is very hard. Like Kaye was saying as well, that like we're in a very competitive industry, and we're always thinking about, you know, the things that we do in a way is like, is this the best way to do it? Is that the best way to do it? And oh, I have to criticize things as I take them in, because that's part of being a designer. Not negative criticism, but just criticism, like picking things apart and seeing, you know, what they are as they come. So having an employee say, I'm really having a hard time with my mental health. You know, I just went through a massive breakup and I don't know what to do with myself. Well, you know, if your employer's like, well, yeah, of course he did. Like, he was a jerk. Like, you can't say that, right? Like, you can't have the frank conversation you would have with a friend, because what you're there and what you're meant to be doing is supporting someone through something that they're finding troubling. So it's being able to take that step back, right? It's that is it an intrinsic or extrinsic response that you're having? Is it, you know, I have this feeling about how I should respond to you, or I understand that I should be listening to you and then doing something about it, because that's why you're coming to me. It's, you know, one of the most important things you can do is if someone's trying to tell you something, it's like, do you want advice or do you want me to listen? Right? And people need to be able to work in both of those modes. Is that if you just need to speak to a manager, and I've done this before. So I went through what was a very long, drawn out and very sad divorce. And what I did one day, I didn't tell anyone about it until fairly deep into the process of it happening. And I went to one of my managers and I was just like, I need to tell you that this is really hard, and I don't need you to say anything or do anything, but I just need you to know that I am having a really hard time with this. And that was about it. That's all that needs to happen. And he was very sweet, and he said, I'm really sorry. Do you want a hug? And I think that was about as far as it got. But then there was a baseline of understanding that if I was having a really shit day, or I had come back from counseling and my mascara was down my face, basically, it was like, okay, give her 10 minutes, tell her to go get a coffee. Like, she needs to have, like, I got told a couple of times, like, if you had a really hard session, you can just go walk around. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to sit at the tube station for a while. No one will bother me there. Right. So it's being able to do that. It's having people like take what you're telling them and not process it, just let it hang in the air, be like, okay, this is what you need, this is what we'll do for you. And to have it be like an action focused response, as opposed to a like processing an emotional response, is that what someone's doing. So if an employee comes to you and says, I'm having a hard time with this, you go, okay, how can I help? And then that's where that conversation starts. Like it's really difficult. And in companies like that are very tight knit, where people are friends and they outside of work and they do connect on a social level, that gets really, really tricky. Is that you want to help someone, be like, oh yeah, let's just have a natter about it. That will make you feel better. But it's about being able to be measured in that moment and to be able to provide support in a different way. I think that is hard, because our normal human reactions are, I'm very sympathetic, let's go through it and like, talk about it. But really what an employee needs is someone that can be impartial and someone that can ask. I think I've said that about 3 times now, so I'm going to stop. Sorry.
No, it's important. Yeah. I think that does bring us to the end of the session. There are a few more questions, so I'll make sure to send those around, and we'll stick them on the website as well, so that people that have attended can have a look, see what else was asked. There are a few more resources as well, and links to sort of websites that might be of help if you're sort of in immediate need, or if you'd like to research a bit more. I know there's a few on the Designer's Mind website, and we'll stick a few mentions in the email as well. So that just leaves it to thank you both so much for joining us today for this discussion. It was really, really great talking to you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been really, really great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thanks everyone for attending. Thank you. Bye now.